So I'm here at Guantanamo, and I'm actually sitting here on the hill overlooking the infamous Camp X-Ray, the one that generated all the outrage back in 2002. You know, you remember the photos of the guys in the orange jumpsuits, they were blindfolded, earmuffs, secured to their heads, handcuffed behind their backs, kneeling on the ground, like the bare ground, with like the sun beating down on them. That camp. You're actually not allowed to photograph it anymore, so which is why it's turned on me. But it's still here. It's being overgrown by tropical plants and trees and all that. I come here every so often when I'm down here at Guantanamo, when frustration is at its highest. And there's always a point, right, on every trip where frustration just gets to be a lot. And what I'm frustrated about today are some of the headlines that I've been seeing, especially reading them from down here. I think it hits a little harder. Things like DHS is engaging in third country deportations, transferring people to foreign countries where they're at risk of torture. Breaking news. I saw one yesterday or a couple of days ago that said, breaking news, people are being held without any charges at that horrible name, Alligator Alcatraz, and the government won't release the names of the detainees. Breaking news, right? And I was looking at a social media post, or I scrolled past like a social media post by a lawmaker, one of the lawmakers who visited the Everglades facility, the Alligator Alcatraz that they're calling it, a couple of days ago, right? And he had like a list of his notes. The first thing was no phones and no cameras allowed. Yeah. Since Guantanamo opened in 2002, photography and filming have been very tightly controlled here. Ask the media or observers who have come down here for 23 years what you think are the most innocuous images will be banned. Camp X-Ray being overgrown by plants, right? Everyone saw it when it had detainees in it. You can't look at it now, right? And it's entirely to maintain the fiction of this place as some sort of national security imperative. I think the second item was no speaking to detainees. Yeah, detainees here have never been allowed to speak to the media or give any kind of direct statements. When detainee artwork that was legally made here at Guantanamo and legally transferred to their lawyers was exhibited in New York in 2017, the reaction of the Department of Defense was to stop all artwork from leaving the island and to issue a policy statement. It's not legal, by the way, that DOD owns all detainee art. Again, that's not a legal position, or not a legally defensible position. This lawmaker noted that in Florida they were not allowed to walk through the holding cages. Yeah. That's something it didn't start at Guantanamo. It's not unique to Gitmo, but it is unique actually to many prisons in the United States. Outside inspectors are generally not allowed, or it's been a struggle to get inspectors, like this is, for example, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Torture, into prisons in the United States, and of course here at Guantanamo. And the only reason for that is because you have something to hide, because the conditions are so grim that any reasonable person would call them inhumane. Very few media or outside observers have ever walked through the camps here at Guantanamo, and you can see those images online. Most memorably, I think it was back in 2013 or 2014 when my former client Shakar Amar was able to yell at a 60 Minutes crew about some of the abuse that they were suffering in DOD custody here at Guantanamo. Guess how many media walkthroughs of the holding cells there have been since then. There was a note that in Florida a couple days ago, they did not have access to medical tent. Yeah, this is an issue that is actually straight from Guantanamo that's risen to the level of crisis over the last few years, although I guarantee that almost none of you have heard about it. The official position of the United States government is that detainees here receive the same quality of care as the service members on base, and that is false, because Guantanamo Bay has the capability to provide preventative care and address very basic medical issues. For any complex care, service members are actually sent off island and medevaced if necessary. And that's happened, in fact, to my own team members who've had to leave island in a hurry when they encounter any sort of serious medical issue. It can't be addressed here. A former medical official testified a few years ago that, in fact, there's currently no capacity to really provide complex care to the prisoners here, the detainees who are rapidly aging, and have sort of exponentially increasing medical issues. One detainee has had 6 spinal surgeries here at Guantanamo. Why? Because problems arose during his first. In the United States, you'd call that medical malpractice. And here the detainees have absolutely no recourse. And there's actually a law, right, preventing them from coming to the United States for medical treatment or for any other reason. My client, Amar Al-Baluchi, currently has a spinal tumor, so you can imagine his and our terror about that situation, and you know, the possibilities, the dangers that throws up. So yeah, when a detaining power won't give you access to see the medical facilities, or they give you propaganda lines about medical facilities, that's because they either don't exist or are grotesquely inadequate, and it is a violation of domestic and international law to withhold medical care from people in custody. It's been happening here at Gitmo for ages. There are 2 major reports, actually, by Physicians for Human Rights and the Centers for Victims of Torture, and also by the former UN Special Rapporteur on the Promotion and Protection of Human Rights in Counterterrorism, just from the past few years, from 2019 and I believe 2023, on this exact issue. And we've litigated access to medical care for several years, and that's publicly available, although no one has really cared, to be honest, when it's about Muslim men at Guantanamo Bay. There was a note, again, from the visit a couple days ago to the Florida facility. There was a note that there are detainees with no criminal records in cages. There were, and that there were 750 detainees inside this facility. Where do I start? Between 2002 and February 2025, there were just under 800 detainees held at Guantanamo Bay over the course of that time. You know how many of them were ever charged with anything? Under 20. The same number of detainees have died here at Guantanamo as have been convicted. That's 9. There's never been a trial for September 11th, which is the entire reason for this place's existence. And there may never be, because of how badly the United States tortured the defendants once they were captured. And that's something else that people don't seem to know, that actually, this is just, I'm digressing a little here, but the government made a conscious decision, the Bush administration, to torture the suspected perpetrators in secret prisons around the world instead of bringing them to court to face trial. They only brought them to Guantanamo when people started to find out about the black sites. And then they had to figure out sort of how to work backwards and bring them to trial, and how to have a trial, even though they'd spent several years torturing them incommunicado. And that's another whole topic for another time. Then there was a note about contractors at this Florida facility getting rich on to the tune of something like $450 million. The camps here at Guantanamo cost an estimated $540 million per year, according to the New York Times. It is an incredibly expensive piece of national security theater, but I don't see a whole lot of public outcry about that. Now when you point out that all this money is being spent and most detainees have never been charged, the government likes to say, well, but we're holding these detainees here at Guantanamo under the laws of war, so we don't have to charge them. We can just hold them until the end of the war, however long that is. I don't want to go into a lot of legalese here, and these positions have all been litigated and written about all over the place, including by me. And there are many reasons why the government's position is wrong, and then that they really are totally bastardizing the laws of war, which is an incredibly dangerous thing to do. But what is important about this is that we have been saying for literal decades that if the United States government can turn random Muslim men, many of whom we've now released because they actually had no tie to any war or attack, if we can turn them into enemy combatants just by saying so, then the United States government can expand that executive power to designate almost anyone as a combatant, as an enemy combatant, or anything to be a war, right? And that is what we are now seeing with, for example, the designation of Tren de Aragua as a terrorist organization over the objections of the intelligence community and all available evidence, with the, let's say, extra-legal invocation of the Alien Enemies Act against people that this administration doesn't like. This whole issue of people being held without charge or even adequate justification in contravention of domestic and international law on war or immigration or whatever is applicable, that's at the core of Guantanamo. And the only reason it has continued here for so long is because of racism and apathy about this group of people here. And so what is happening around the country, what is happening in the Everglades at that facility, what is happening in facilities along the border, what is happening at CCOT, what is happening in these third parties, these third countries where people are being sent, are absolute tragedies. But it was all foreseeable. It was all foreseeable from what has happened here at Guantanamo for a very long time. What is happening with enforced disappearances to CCOT and Sudan, is literally the definition of the extraordinary rendition program. What we're seeing with government propaganda to justify racist targeting, ask the men here. Ask the Muslim community in the US post 9/11, about 2 decades of that. The entire reason most of you don't know all of the facts underpinning what I'm talking about is because of the success of that propaganda by 4 administrations, not just one president or one lawmaker, but by 4 separate administrations. And what you should know, because we've been telling you since 2002, is that the U.S. government's literal motto here at Guantanamo, until it honestly became too sadly comical to support anymore, was, quote, safe, humane, legal, and transparent, right? And does that sound familiar now? Okay, the last thing I want to say, because it has been lost in the swirl of breaking news, is that there are new detainees here at Guantanamo. The government won't give us the number, or their names, or their places of origin, or any information about any kind of criminal record, right, or lack thereof. We can't walk through their cells. They have almost no ability to contact counsel. Immigration counsel have not yet been allowed to come to Guantanamo to meet with them. So it's like 2002 all over again. And that is where my frustration is stemming from now. So what is happening now, it's not that it's not a tragedy, it is, and it's not that it should not inspire outrage and breaking news alerts, but at the same time, I hope that this time the outrage spurs action, right? Action in returning to the rule of law.